So I'm going to go quickly through this, but basically understanding how a software supply chain is created, how a specific software, which app gets built in which container, which library get loaded in which particular base image that get loaded in where, is the answer you need to answer, for example, on container vulnerability and SCA vulnerability. And that's even more important if it's exploitable, because if it's reachable, highly likelihood that that vulnerability is going to be exploitable. And this is a very hard problem to solve from an engineering team. As soon as you give an engineering team an SCA vulnerability or a container vulnerability, he needs to do this similar diagram to understand, do I even own it? Is it coming in the container? Is it coming from the base image? Is it coming from the repository? And who owns the repository? And understanding which app is built where, or is it in the image the problem? Is it in the base image the problem? Is it in the origin that I'm download from a specific repository somewhere else? Or is it in the build where I include my SCA vulnerability or my open source vulnerability? Every time we raise a container vulnerability or an SCA vulnerability, this diagram needs to appear in the head of a developer. And if it doesn't, he needs to build it. And that takes hours. And that takes a lot of investigation. That takes a lot of decompiling, especially if the container has been already built. That's where we specialize with Phoenix, and that's what we obsess, because that's an answer that prevents burnout. Understanding who does what where and trying to separate the left from the right or making it seamless is what saves engineering and security a lot of fight. And then you can start talking about SLA. I'm not going to go to the detail. We can maybe discuss in the break an example of that and how the 4 reachability analysis exist. And for the first SCA vendor or any vendor that's going to come to you and tell you, we have reachability analysis, just to annoy him, ask him, what of the 4 reachability analysis you have? Which one of the 4? File level reachability analysis, build level reachability analysis, container to cloud reachability analysis, network reachability analysis. Just to annoy it, just to make the SCE work a little bit harder. So let's talk about LLM. Let's talk about AI and how we can take a basic risk approach to vulnerability and how we can tie all these together. So the question you want to answer is really, how do I go from tons of vulnerability that I have to the one that are exploitable, weaponizable, actually reachable, deployed to production, and actually important? That is the funnel that you need to look at. And then basically go from a very basic CVSS, that's where most of the organizations start the journey in vulnerability prioritization, to a journey where you consider likelihood of exploitation, reachability, and business criticality.